So this month sees World Environment Day and World Oceans Day. So I thought it would be an ideal time to catch up with Lizzie and Stephen about our digital carbon footprint. We'll start off with some visual descriptions. I'm Kay. I'm a white female with a blonde asymmetrical haircut, and I'm currently wearing a green top with a blue necklace.
Hi, I'm Lizzie. I am a white female. I've got long brown hair and I'm wearing a black top with a leopard print collar.
Hi, I'm Stephen. I'm a white male with brown hair and a beard. I'm currently wearing an orange shirt.
Fantastic. So I think people understand carbon footprint from a physical perspective, but rather than supply chain activity like manufacturing or assembly and transport, digital advertising creates a digital footprint by driving traffic to your website that are dependent on servers with electricity bills and subsequently high emissions. Currently, the digital advertising agency generates approximately 3.5% of global greenhouse gases every year, so really needs to be taken into account. Lizzie, starting with yourself, why should you be taking note of your company's marketing carbon emissions, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's so important because, as you say, like the figure is really high. And I think we live in a world where digital consumption is becoming more and more, and it's exponential. And sometimes when we switch from a physical product, say something that was printed on paper, and then we switch it to digital, we need to look at the whole picture. Like the digital version isn't carbon free, there will still be an aspect of carbon. So it's just important to have that awareness that digital isn't carbon free. It can still be better than a printed option, but you need to know what it actually is and how you can reduce it.
Do you have anything to add to that question?
Yeah, I'd say as well, overall to your business as well, it's got to help make improvements with your process and also cost wise as well. And to be able to kind of track all that information, you can kind of see where you could potentially make savings and how you could kind of improve your processes.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's a win for the environment, it's a win for you as a business, and it's a win for your customers. So really, if you work in advertising, marketing, or digital, it really is something that everyone should be taking note of. If you could simplify things a little bit further for me, Lizzie, how would you explain what digital carbon is?
Okay, so data centers, so everything, that uses data, it's going through a data center, and to keep those servers cool, we need to use a lot of electricity to power fans, or, the other side could be water. There's a water footprint to cooling things down. So really we want to minimize that. And that's the sort of invisible part behind a website, for example. Like when someone goes to a website, they don't necessarily see how the data center is using energy, whether it's fossil fuel, electricity. So yeah, just to simplify it, everything that happens on a website that creates data is then, going through this data center.
So do you think if you had a environmentally friendly eco kind of data center or hosting platform, that would be enough?
It will improve things, but then it will still not necessarily be the best solution, because say you had a big video that's auto playing, okay, even if it could use fully renewables, that's still probably using a lot more than if it had been set to letting the user opt in and press play. And yeah, I think we don't have enough electricity that's renewably powered in the world, and really we need to be saving as much of that as possible for homes, powering hospitals, schools, etc. So yeah,
absolutely. So use wisely. I think, Stephen, with video, it's quite hard for people to understand the kind of the carbon footprint on from a video perspective. So could you simplify that a little bit for me, please?
Yeah, I suppose with video, it's measuring kind of the environmental impacts of your production. And obviously with videos, they can potentially be quite vast. We've kind of got the pre-production planning phase, then we've got the actual filming, which can involve a lot of locations, a lot of crew, a lot of traveling, a lot of specialist equipment to either purchase or hire, and then what happens to that equipment. And then there's also the post-production. How do we go about ensuring the edit is kind of as efficient as possible, using the best kind of systems in place? So yeah, it's quite a lot to take in, but yeah, it's the environmental impact of your entire production.
Cool. So if we look at what steps we can help to reduce your carbon footprint, and I'm going to go through a few examples here just because marketing is so vast. So if we start with email marketing, currently 300 billion emails are sent every year, and email we send apparently generates 26 grams of CO2. So there's a lot to be said about making your email marketing more concise and using a sustainable email marketing platform like EcoSend. What other tips could you use, Lizzie?
Yeah, so only send an email if you really need to. So a common culprit is somebody might send 5 emails in a day that could have actually been 1 email with 5 points. That's a really quick win that anyone can do. And, you know, with the marketing side, you know, users don't like to be bombarded anyway. So, yeah, actually sending an email. So when someone's opted in, so if they've said, you know, in the sign up that they prefer to only hear content, for example, about sustainability, then only send them that. Don't send them, you know, your full range of marketing. And then imagery, like, you know, use it when it's needed, but keep it as small as possible and compressed. Yeah, those are just a few top level things.
I mean, the segmenting lists is a fantastic way to not send mass emails and only to send to people who are interested in that particular subject, like you say. But it's not only eco, it's actually also better, you know, customer experience, because like you say, you don't want to be bombarded with information that isn't relevant to you, and you're likely to unsubscribe to an email list if you're getting that kind of content. So actually, again, it comes back to the point that we said earlier, it's just generally good for the business and for customers and the environment. And also with imagery, a lot of people choose to have imagery switched off from an eco perspective. And so you need to make sure that your email content is creative enough that you don't need any supporting imagery and it speaks for itself, right? And one thing I see a lot of is emails that aren't tested for dark mode. And a lot of people choose to go dark mode purely from an eco perspective because it uses less energy on the screen. So how do you kind of ensure that things are going to look great for both light and dark mode?
Yeah, so first of all, test it. So send a test email and have a look, and straight away you'll probably, you know, if you haven't considered that, you'll notice straight away that your logo might have disappeared, for example. So does anyone know who you even are when you send the email? So one, for people who've maybe got a black and white logo, you can always put an outline around it. That's one way people kind of fix that problem, or you can have it on a plain white background. So yeah, that's the first thing. You don't want to lose your logo because nobody knows who you are. But yeah, also looking at your colors as well, like your link colors, you know, are they still, you know, visible, and switching to what you'd like. Yeah.
If we move on to videos, Stephen, and I read a stat the other day that websites with autoplay videos can actually generate 10.8 grams of CO2, and that's according to Wired, and that's just compared to 0.24 for a website with a light design. So 100% we need to stop autoplaying videos, right? We need to stop these full screen and compress as much as you can to reduce your footprint even further. But what else can be done to reduce the carbon footprint of actually video once it's created?
Yeah, I would say that's probably main one really, stopping autoplay. We could have an image in place of that and having a play button to then give the user the chance to play the video. Also, think about where your video is hosted as well. Do you need to host it on your website directly, or can you just kind of upload it to YouTube and then embed from YouTube or Vimeo? Because also you get additional kind of analytics to go along with that, and there's SEO benefits. Yeah, I think just and also possibly when you're compressing your video directly from your editing software, are there any kind of reductions you can make without impacting the overall quality of the video? Does it still look good at this certain codec or this certain quality, but is reduced by about 100 megabytes, for example? You know, that can all kind of make a difference.
Yeah, I think people make the assumption that, you know, they need to embed it on their site as well. But actually, if you look at the eco credentials and you think, right, YouTube is the most sustainable platform at this moment in time that you could use, then you're better off putting it there. And then you can use your website, social media, your ads, all of it can pull your email marketing, every kind of platform can pull from one central location, right?
Exactly. It makes sense as well. And it means that you're not exporting loads of different types of videos from your editing software. You've kind of got the one master MP4, which you're then kind of using for all your marketing, as opposed to, okay, I've got one for my website. I've got one for my website when viewed on mobile, one for this specific browser. So yeah, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah. And I think when you're actually creating the videos themselves, there's a lot of misuse in the fact that people will send it as an attachment, let's say, or whereas actually if you send it via, let's say, WeTransfer as an example, then that only lasts for 30 days and then it gets deleted. It's not sat there in your storage for no reason. You could use obviously things like Google Drive and Frame.io, but that is more sustainable at that initial moment in time, but it has to come down to making sure you remove it once you've done the export and it's live, correct?
100%. Yeah, I would say that's a really kind of common thing where you can upload loads of previews to Drive or Frame, for example, and then you're on to a next kind of version of the video, but you've still kept them on there. So I think a big thing of it is kind of just ensuring that you're kind of managing your assets really, and kind of going through, okay, that version's not required anymore because all those changes have been made in this next version, so let's remove that and let's get that away from our Google Drive now, and let's delete that.
Obviously videos end up on social media, as does static content, and we actually on average spend 2.5 hours a day on social media, which is quite a high number, I think. And a single ad campaign generates 70 tons of CO2, which is equivalent to the same as what 7 people on average release into the atmosphere in a year. So really, ad campaigns really need to be kind of taking note. Obviously, from a video perspective, you know, the big players, I'll say YouTube and TikTok, but spending a minute on YouTube generates 0.46 grams. But at the other end of the scale, TikTok has an average footprint per minute almost 5 to 6 times that size. So it's thinking about the platform that you choose to use as well, correct?
100%. Yeah. Kind of, yeah, I suppose do a lot of planning for that. Think, okay, do we want to market on TikTok? Let's kind of do a bit of test content on there, possibly reusing content which you currently have, kind of just testing that and looking at the analytics for a month, for example, and kind of being happy, okay, it's beneficial for our business to make content for TikTok. Let's add that as part of our plan. And I suppose for all kind of video content, reviewing where you're putting it on. If you're getting a lot of interaction on YouTube, that's obviously a great avenue. But then, for example, if you're not getting much interaction with your video content on Instagram, then maybe think, oh, actually, is that one less place that we need to upload the video for?
Whereas a lot of people do do one ad or one campaign, and then they put it on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and every platform they can think of. There's probably more. And we were actually talking yesterday, Stephen, when we were discussing kind of video platforms, and TikTok have just upped their limit so that you can add 10-minute worth of video. But if we know per minute, TikTok uses 5 times the amount that YouTube produces, I'd say kind of think about the length of your videos, and maybe TikTok being better for kind of short form as it's so energy heavy, and use YouTube for something more long form.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose as well, with all your content, if there's a 10-minute limit, for example, with TikTok, don't try and see that as a challenge. Oh, let's ensure all our content is 10 minutes. Kind of figure out with your content, okay, I can explain this and it will take 30 seconds, for example, or it will take a minute. That's way more beneficial than uploading a 10-minute video for the sake of it.
Yeah, I think, ultimately consumers prefer short form video nowadays anyway. We're all incredibly impatient and we just want the information there and then. So again, short of, if you can make your 5-minute video 3 minutes, let's say, then you've got less energy used. But also, again, it comes back to the point that we keep to be circling around. It makes better business sense, because if a customer watches a whole 2-minute or 3-minute video versus 50% of a 5-6 minute video, then that's going to be beneficial for your conversion rates.
100%. Our kind of I don't know about you both, but for me, when I'm kind of looking at videos, I want to get the information as quickly as possible, and it kind of, your time is kind of limited. It feels, you can kind of think, okay, I've got that information, now I'm moving on to the next video.
And also social media, 85% of people watch it with the sound switched off. So many people put an audio bed to it or a voiceover, but if only 15% of people actually have volume turned on when they're using social media, you're inflating your file size for absolutely zero benefit. So again, it's better for people if it can work mute, and it's better for the environment if it can work mute.
Exactly. And also, I suppose, think about with the voiceover, you just think, oh, it's recording a voiceover and it's an extra track on your video. But actually, you've got to think, you've got to download lots of different voiceover artists, for example, come up with a script, record that session, possibly travel to the engineering facilities, get that export, add it into your video, export that video. And then it's the same with the music. I suppose you can use stock music, which is obviously a bit better, but then you still got to download a few different samples, one like the most. And then even more with a kind of bespoke music track, I suppose you've got to plan everything which is involved in that and get all the different musicians and instrumentalists.
And then it could be absolutely huge, couldn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And it's something where you might not even need, like you said, 15%. You might not even need it for your video. Does it add that much value?
Yeah. If we take out the video part of social media, Lizzie, and kind of ad campaigns, if it was more static or image based, is there any kind of tips that you'd recommend to try and reduce your social media?
I think one thing to add, though, is that once content is up there, regardless of what format, it doesn't need to stay there. So if it's your Christmas campaign from 3 years ago, does it still need to be on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, etc.? Like,
yeah.
I know Jerry McGovern, who's quite a prominent figure in digital sustainability. He's been talking a lot about a new sort of job role that he expects to appear, of like digital data archivist, that it will be a dedicated person's role to archive and delete like 90% of the company's data eventually. And that does include social media, like thinking about how to remove it all, because it's actually quite quick and easy to do on a lot of these platforms. Like Instagram, you can quickly remove 100 posts if you want to. It's just dedicating some time to it.
Yeah, and not seeing it as a landfill in the sky that you can just keep putting things to. I mean, obviously from a marketing perspective, if you can reuse content, that is so much better than generating new content every single time and generating new imagery or new video or whatever it may be. Actually, if you can reuse marketing, it pays for itself. So therefore, it's again better business sense. But you've already created it once. You don't need to create every single time. Another thing to think about is with kind of ad campaigns is the targeting of that. It's a bit like, what you were saying, Lizzie, about segmenting your list in email marketing. There's brands I see that do targeting to literally every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the world, with no kind of thought about who do I want to see this ad campaign, and only send it to the people that are relevant, that have the location, who have the job description, who have whatever demographic it is you're looking for. That means, again, you're going to get a better conversion rate, and you're going to spend less on your ads, and your, say, pay-per-click or whatever it may be. But you don't need to boost it to everyone in the world and generate huge carbon footprint for, let's be honest, 90% to probably just scroll past because it's not relevant to them. So that's the only other thing I'd probably say on that. And with web design, Lizzie, an average website with 10,000 page views per month could generate 211 grams of CO2 per year, which is the same as what would be absorbed by 105 trees in a year. So there's, I think, again, this misconception that it's about file size, and it's not just good file size. Of course, that's better for kind of page speed and generally your carbon footprint, but it's also about providing good customer journeys and getting them to the information quicker than they would do otherwise, and providing kind of good SEO so people aren't scrolling through Google page 5 to get to the kind of one link that they actually want to visit. But it's such a vast topic, and I know you can't cover everything, but can you cover some of your kind of top ways of reducing your carbon footprint on web design?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's that sweet spot that we're all looking for in like UX and UI, where you're giving the customer enough information that when they come to the site, the user journey is simple, they get to what they want, they get enough information that they feel confident to contact you or buy the product or ask for more help without overwhelming them. So yeah, I think user testing is really important here, because otherwise it's a big assumption of where that balance is. So we give it our best shot. But things that can distract users, also playing video, we've already mentioned that. For some users, that will make them leave the site straight away. So, they've not even had a chance to go through a customer journey there. Yeah, I think large areas of imagery as well. That's another thing that's more on the file size side, but it will push things up. And again, does the customer really need it? Occasionally they might, but mostly they might just need, little bits of graphics here and there that could be SVGs, for example, that can help them support in learning about a product. Yeah, I think there's quite a few things.
There is quite a few things. I mean, the amount of times I land on a site and all I want to do is find out, let's say, get in contact with them, and I can't find that, and I have to click on 8-9 different pages to try and find the one CTA, the one call to action that allows me to get to contact. And it's also just about making things super clear, right? Using less content and copy. Do you need a 50-page website, or can you say all of that in 10? Again, better for the kind of user. But just make things so obvious, I think, is probably the word I'm trying to think of, that you know exactly where you're going in your customer journey, so you can get straight to buying a product, or you can get straight to contact, or whatever it is that you're specifically looking for. You're not clicking about aimlessly, loading up 10 pages unnecessarily.
Definitely. And I think Yeah, that coming back again to like accessibility. If you follow good accessibility and you're doing accessibility and user testing, you're more likely to have that really clear flow of like, oh, actually, we as a designer, we thought that button was obvious on a mobile, but actually it wasn't, or we'd put it in the wrong place and, you know, somebody couldn't actually reach it, or, you know, something was hidden. So then you can refine and just get that user journey really, really good.
Really good, really clear, and improve your conversion rate. So I think the message we're trying to get across, well, I'm certainly trying to get across with everything I keep coming back to, is, you know, it's good for the environment, but it's also good for you as a business. You know, it will help your kind of conversion rate and your brand loyalty. So taking like external marketing out the equation, and what can be done perhaps internally to kind of improve your internal digital footprint as a digital company, let's say. Stephen?
Yeah, I would say what we were saying earlier, just about with your preview of video files, for example, just ensuring that with previews, once you've kind of moved on to a next edit, maybe then deleting those. I would say also with production kind of assets, going through and making sure, okay, did we need that asset? Was that needed? And also what you said earlier, Kay, about reusing assets. Not only will you save money, but then also you can be, okay, we can reuse that. Let's use that going forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to your workflow, right? So you have to create those call sheets, but do they have to be emailed out to every single person, or can you have a central repository that has, let's say, your script, your call sheets, everything you need, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do you remember, I suppose, kind of like 10 years ago, the days of when we do a shoot and we'd have to print everything out, and that just seems ludicrous now. Yeah, now we could have a system where we just use a shared assets folder. We upload the call sheets to there. We can send just that one link to the relevant people. They can then use something like DocuSign or Google Docs to sign that, and then that's completed, and that's taking out one less thing for us to have to do of either printing it out or exporting each of the call sheets out as a PDF, sending 10 or so emails to the client, to the crew, to the locations. It just, I think it's definitely looking at your workflow and seeing how you can make kind of lots of improvements.
And actually, it will improve anyway, because you know that everyone's seeing the latest version, the correct final version. Whereas, obviously, like you say, back in the day when you'd print things or send them out via post, I remember doing that with kind of call sheets and model release forms. You then realize you have to make a change, and you make a change, and you then have to again do it 6 times or 10 times. Whereas this way, you update it and everyone gets the update instantly.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just one email you're having to send. You're having to make the update, export that PDF, send that email out again and again. And yeah, it would just create a massive headache with kind of version control as well. So it makes much more sense to have it online.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything kind of workflow wise from the post production? So, you know, obviously that's kind of getting the crew ready. And then when you actually do a shoot, can you use, you know, natural lighting? Can you film outside rather than lights? Or can you use stock footage rather than spend an extra day on B-roll and local crew? There's so much with the actual physical production of it. But what about post? What would you say is a way to make sure you reduce your internal carbon footprint that way?
Yeah, I would say ensure that you're cleaning up your project as you go. I know I've been guilty in the past of kind of with Premiere files and the project files of just having everything on the timeline and all the assets you've ever had available to use. Kind of ensure you're kind of only using what you actually need. And then also with the exporting, it's like we mentioned earlier with Frame. There's a plugin for Frame you can use with Premiere, for example, where you can just export from there. That'll upload directly to Frame, and then you can use that link to kind of share with the rest of the team or share with your clients, and then kind of add feedback to that. I think that just makes it a lot easier than kind of sending a WeTransfer link, and like you said, that comes with issues of someone won't download it after 2 weeks, and then you're having to re-upload again. Which version is that? Okay, you're having to send another email to someone to say, okay, please try this version. So yeah, I think frames are really big kind of help in the post-production side of things.
Yeah, and when you're going through, say, the planning and the post-production phase, obviously a lot of people go to video meetings now rather than physical meetings, which is fantastic in the fact that it reduces carbon. But we need to make sure by default we think about cameras off and things like that, right?
Exactly.
To kind of, I think it's about just coming back to being mindful about everything. You know, is it really needed, I suppose?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's kind of just thinking about every simple thing, and it can seem quite pedantic, but I suppose if you think a lot of little things, and if you're making a lot of those changes, they can all kind of like group together to make a kind of bigger change. And also as well, it's not just, say for example, one person decides to turn their camera off for meetings when they're not needed. It's then the kind of the effect of other people in that business might be, okay, actually,
Isn't it?
yeah, and then it's kind of, okay, maybe our clients will see that, okay, yeah, that's a good idea, we don't need to do that. So it's the kind of the ripple effect from it, which is obviously very good.
Lizzie, from a kind of design perspective, what can we look at to kind of reduce our internal workflow carbon footprint?
Yeah, so we tend to think of like one cloud. So, you know, Figma is a cloud, Adobe has a cloud, you know, Google Drive, that's another cloud, Slack, another cloud. So we want to always be thinking, okay, try to only have like one file in one cloud, and like maybe an offline backup, depending on what it is. But like, for example, if we fill up Slack full of images that are actually in Google Drive as well, then we're doubling up. So we can actually just send a link to Google Drive on Slack for people to review. With Figma, like having used it for a year now, at first I was skeptical because it is an online only program, but the efficiency with it is just so brilliant that actually, because it's all in one place, and you know, the client can be commenting live in a meeting as well, changes can be done immediately for some small tweaks. Like actually the efficiency there is great, because it used to be like, okay, an offline sketch file, then we'd have to push it through Craft plugin to InVision, so it's actually 3 programs needed. So yeah, I guess it's always like having that mindfulness and looking for efficiency and kind of testing things out and trying them.
Yeah. It's the same as Frame.io, like Stephen mentioned. It's just a platform that allows you for clients to add comments directly there, rather than let's say the 10 emails back and forth to kind of work out exactly what changes are required, and it's all timestamped. So it makes it easier to do any amends to Figma or to a video if you've got it all in one central place.
Definitely, yeah. I think we're always looking for efficiency here at the core of it with everything. Obviously, as an industry, we do need some, programs and assets. But yeah.
But it's whether you need 10 different versions that all do versions of software that potentially do something very, very similar, isn't it?
Yeah, we've come a long way from the days of Photoshop files for websites, so I'm very glad for that.
V29 final V2. Okay, I mean, I hope this has helped people understand that every single thing you do has a digital footprint, and I think personally I like to see it as a comparison to the physical world. So, would someone have sent, say, 10 letters in a post? No, they wouldn't. They would send one and collate everything. Think of that exactly the same. It's just because you can't see it, it still does something, and it still makes a kind of impact. And as an industry, we're going more and more online. We're going more and more digital. Companies are becoming more remote, as in working remotely. That it's something that could grow exponentially if it's not kind of dealt with sooner rather than later. And there's a couple of books that I'd say would be worth potentially reading if you're wanting to learn more about it. And you've got one book called Sustainable Web Design and another one called Sustainable Marketing, and they really both break it down into really simple to understand, ways of doing it. Is there anything else that either of you two would like to kind of close with?
I think for me, as an industry, I do feel a responsibility to educate people as well, because I think if you think about the real world, like over time, we've all been educated about how to do recycling or, how to transition and get solar, but we need to do the same with digital. So within our own industry and to our customers.
Yeah. No, I would just say, keep kind of reviewing everything you do. So look at all the software you're using. I think you said earlier, does that one software, do you need 10 different versions of software, or can you just have one version which kind of does it all? I think, constantly kind of reviewing everything and seeing where you can kind of make updates will really help overall.
Well, thanks, guys. Good chatting to you, and hope everyone has a good World Environment Day and World Ocean Day, and use the time to think about how you can be more sustainable in your physical world as well as the digital world we live in.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.